Okay. Um, let's see here. Which schools can get me the official, legal, legitimate work visa? Okay. That's a question you may be asking yourself. There are a plethora of different there are so many different kinds of schools advertising out there for all kinds of different teaching jobs in China. Some are teaching kids, some are adults, some are teaching in public schools, uh, high schools, universities operated by the government. Others are private training centers, private schools. There are so many. Well, first of all, let's get one thing straight, and that's you probably already guessed that generally speaking, government schools, government owned schools, all are qualified to get you the work visa. That means that particular institution that gives you an offer for a job, they're advertising online. They have the right and are legally entitled. The government will give you a visa on their behalf, or essentially they can apply for it for you. You apply for the visa, but they can get the necessary approvals within the country so that you'll successfully be granted that visa. Okay. Now, there are also a number of the larger training centers, the more established, usually the national brands, that also can do it. For example, I presently have a work visa, a completely legitimate work visa, and I work for one of those schools. Um, but but interestingly enough, there are a few of them that don't, and they still have hundreds of teachers working for them, and they're large corporate organizations. Some of them are actually very professional in terms of their teaching material. I mean, that's relatively speaking. They're professional as compared to their peers here in China. I wouldn't say that teaching methodology and practices in China are near as good, especially when it comes to as they are in the West, especially when it comes to language learning. That's a separate question, but I can say that quite unequivocally. But so hey, um, which are the schools that can't get me a visa, can't get me a work visa, but they're still advertising for jobs? Well, there are a lot of those, and normally, let me give you the. And I'm not saying look out for them. I'm not saying don't teach at them. Um, Although remember, technically, you do need to have a work visa to teach in China. Although there are about 200,000 or more teachers in China teaching without one. Okay, those are just the facts. It's totally undeniable. If you don't know that, well, you just don't know. Um, so there is one type of school uh, that you will encounter. They may even constitute the majority of advertisements out there. It may even be the majority. Uh, and those are these private training schools for kids. Um, and about 80% of those schools cannot get you an official work visa, although they're more than willing to have you, and they are expecting you to get some kind of business tourist. In certain cases, sometimes they'll even want you to get a student visa. They'll have some, either they'll know somebody, or they'll have something set up so they can do that. But usually they'll just do business visa. Okay, I would say, now, how do I know this? Well, the first reason I know is because I know some of those owners. I know them personally, and I've talked about this issue with them, and I know unequivocally that it is the case. Um, Another reason I can tell you this is because of my former girlfriend is a recruiting agent, and what she does is she goes and she hooks up private training centers with teachers. Now, and she would talk to me and tell me the ins and outs of everything. What teachers are getting which job, which teachers the schools want. And I can tell you 80% of all of these jobs that say, we want you to teach, middle school students or primary school students or whatever it is, 10 to 14-year-olds for after school lessons and on weekends. And we're offering you 12,000 renminbi plus a place to live, or 10,000 renminbi plus an apartment and some extra things. There are just hundreds of thousands and thousands of those jobs and opportunities out there. And sometimes they even pay, they don't require you to work that hard. They don't require you to work that much, and they're still paying a very decent wage. So I'm not saying that those opportunities aren't decent. And oftentimes, if they're in a smaller city, maybe not a small city, but a city that's maybe 2 hours outside of Shenzhen, in Huizhou or Danshui, Shantou, all these, they're not small cities, they're like kind of second tier cities, like a Sacramento or an Austin or something like that. Not a big city, but, and given purchasing power parity, given the fact that apartments in those cities are really cheap, food is cheap, everything is really cheap, it can be a really good economic deal. And the pace of life is slower, people are friendlier, nicer, etc. Maybe there's less pollution in some of those cities, and sometimes maybe there's more. It depends which one you go to, but those ones do not. And so what they'll do is they want you to get a business visa, and they may or may not know somebody who will help you to do that, but you normally don't need too much help with that. You can go if you decide to get your visa in Hong Kong, you can go in Chungking mansions, and just going up and down the elevator, walking around, you'll see. You might see 5 or 6 different agencies right there, and they'll tell you a price, 2,000 renminbi or 3,000. It used to be that the going rate for a 1-year visa, I think prices have dropped a little bit because there's been a loosening up of the business visa rules for Americans and Canadians. I don't know if British nationals can get the 10-year visa, but now Americans can get a 10-year business visa. And I know a number of Americans who have a 10-year visa. You have to leave the country every 2 months, so it makes it easier if you're towards the south of the country, so you can pop across the border to Hong Kong for an hour or for a day and come back. But if you're in the north of the country, that's not nearly as convenient. If you're down here, for example, in Guangdong province, in Shenzhen, Canton, this whole area. But at any rate, the prices for the going rate used to be about 5,000 to 6,000 renminbi for a 1-year visa. Again, that's what the going rate always was, and you probably find some of these visa agents out there, these services, they'll try to charge you that much. That's $1,000 for a 1-year visa. So you can do the math. If you make $30,000 a year gross income after tax, or usually you don't pay any tax if you work for those schools on a business visa, they kind of have their own thing going. But just be aware of that, and there are some risks if you're on a business visa. Just recently, I know of in Shenzhen, in one of the bar districts on New Year's Eve, just about 3 weeks ago, some of the police went to one of these parties, one of these establishments where there are a lot of foreigners, and they picked up a bunch of them. And because they didn't have their passports with them. Nobody has their passport with them. No, very few people carry it with them. So they took them in, about 20 of them, into the station, based on, and I have this on first account, okay, from a guy who actually has a work visa and he works here, but he was among them uh, when they went there, and they took them all down to the station because most of them didn't have their passports with them, because they'll take them down to the station for a few hours and try to verify and get everything, figure out what's going on. They rarely do that, but sometimes they do. And so they were out at a large party spot where the police knew lots of foreigners would be. And two or three, as I understand, two or three of them actually admitted, yeah, I'm working in, they went after their drinking, they went out at night at a party place, and they just brought them all in. Most of the people didn't have any problem. Oh, okay, yeah, fine. But two or three of them admitted that they have a business visa. And then number two, they said that they're also working. I don't know if they said that, well, I'm working at XYZ school, but they said, I am teaching English, I am working. And they simultaneously, in the same breath, they let out that I have a business visa, not a work visa. And they deported those people. Okay? So if you're going to be that is very foolhardy. Okay? They're probably drinking or, doing whatever to do something so foolish as to tell the police officer. Then you can get yourself in trouble. That you've got to understand. I know there was this one school where they used to have a lot of teachers there. All of them were teaching on business visas, and right across the street was a police station. And not just any police station either. It was like it was higher up on the institutional pecking order. It was a number of years ago. It wasn't just like a little traffic cop station. Okay, right across the street, and nothing happened. No one cared. But and all of the details of why that is the situation is a separate question. Okay, it's one thing to just say, well, this is what's happening, I'm reporting on it, and it's another to try to explain the whys of how this came to be or whatever. But what's most important for your purposes is to find out, well, what's really going on and what are the real risks, etc. So again, I am not telling you to work in China without a work visa, but because I'm not doing it. I don't do that. Although everybody is, so many people are, you have to understand the situation. You can't never be that foolhardy to do something like that. I don't need to do that. Although there are many people, let me give you just an example. There was a school, Best English. Best English is very, as far as kids' schools, they're probably doing one of the best jobs in teaching kids, as far as I know. And I have met teachers teaching there who were on business visas, and they would take them all, like a group of them, they would take them to a visa processing agent. They'd all wait there, and they'd get their business visa for 6 months. And some of them would get the 3-month visa, and some would get the 6-month visa, and they just do that periodically. And this is a large corporate outfit with 100+ centers all over China, and with tons and tons of students, etc. So let's see here. Now, another thing, where should you look for yours? Well, let's see here. I guess that's all for this video.